You are afraid to start homeschooling. Well, guess what? Everybody's afraid when they first start. So today we are going to tackle the 5 most common fears that homeschooling parents have so that you can sleep a little better tonight. Now, just for the record, I do have individual videos on each of these concerns. So if this video does not do enough to help you get rid of those fears, make sure you watch the rest of this playlist. The most common concern parents have about homeschooling is, what if it makes my kid weird? None of us want to think of our child being the one that's left out of the group, standing in the corner, not knowing how to make friends. But one of the reasons why this myth persists that homeschoolers are awkward and unsocialized is because in reality, homeschooled kids are not being forced to look like everyone else. We are so used to kids knocking off their own corners so they can round themselves out and look exactly like everyone else and not stick out in a bad way, that when a child is confident in who they are and is willing to just like the things that they like unapologetically, people kind of don't know what to do with that. And it looks different because we're so used to seeing the opposite, seeing kids who will do anything to fit in and they won't admit that they like certain things or that they want to do certain things because that's just not what everybody else does. So, in reality, a lot of times homeschoolers are actually very confident, very mature. They like what they like, and they're not going to apologize for it. Now, we do want to make sure that our kids actually get to be with other kids. They do not have to do it for 8 hours a day because obviously that is not what socializes you if you're just surrounded by people who are exactly the same level as you socially. So, what we want to do is make sure that our kids are getting around people of different ages, people of different stages of life, people with different beliefs, people with different backgrounds. We have the opportunity as homeschoolers to be very intentional about who our children spend time with. And so we're actually able to help our children become better socialized than the kids that are in public school because we can take them to a variety of opportunities and experiences to meet so many different kinds of people and to learn how to actually function in society, which is what socialization actually is. The second concern that so many parents have is college. Is my child going to be able to get into college? Do colleges even want to work with homeschoolers? The answer is yes. Colleges tend to love homeschoolers for a variety of reasons. They tend to not have had the love of learning stamped out of them. They actually still enjoy learning. They're engaged in their own education and they have a sense of ownership over it. A lot of times they have a lot of self initiation. They know how to get going, they know how to go find what it is that they need so that they can get the education that they want. In fact, I read an article about a professor who was talking about how he can always tell who the homeschoolers are in his lecture because they're the ones that actually sit in the front row and ask questions. I never asked questions in a lecture when I was in college. I never would have thought to. But homeschoolers are so used to talking with adults and dialoguing that when they're in a college setting, they don't really see why they should stop. So, yes, colleges are thrilled quite often to have homeschoolers because they reflect very well on their university. Now, the third concern that a lot of parents have is, what if I forget to teach something important? Here's the thing about that: there is no such thing as the one official education that everybody is supposed to have. There are things that pretty much everyone should know how to do, but in terms of general information, not everybody needs to know the same thing. And there is no expiration date or deadline on your child's ability to learn. If you teach them how to learn, then it doesn't matter what you maybe don't get around to teaching. If they need to know it, they'll be able to learn it on their own. Now, there are things that you can do to kind of make sure that you've gotten all the big bases covered. One of those things is a resource that I have called the Skills and Knowledge Checklists. I'll put a link to that in the description of this video so that you can take a look at that. But basically, what it does is take all 4 of the major academic subjects, breaks them down into their subcategories, and breaks those down into skill and knowledge bits, all the little individual things that you might use to kind of create a unit of study or that you might find if you were to look in a curriculum. You can use those as a guide for what you're doing with your kids so that you can kind of take a look at their whole education and see, what have we not really covered yet? Ooh, we should cover some of this. Let's do some of this year. You can use it as a way to look at your child's education all in kind of one glance so that you can make sure there aren't any huge glaring holes in what they've learned. The fourth thing that parents worry about is whether or not they are going to be able to teach. A lot of times parents assume that because they're not a teacher, they are somehow at a disadvantage for being able to instruct their own child. Here's two things you need to remember though. First of all, you started homeschooling the day your child came to you. Whether it was through adoption or foster care or birth, you started teaching them immediately. We just call it parenting, but it turns out that homeschooling is just an extension of parenting. Just because we shift our focus from behavior and habits to math and science doesn't mean that you suddenly do not have the ability to explain things to your children. But you may think, well, I'm not a teacher, so I don't have the knowledge to teach them. Well, guess what? Teachers don't always have the knowledge either. They have the teacher's textbook. They have the answer key. They have the instructor's guide. They have the information in a book that tells them, teach this stuff. I can tell you from personal experience that when you go through a teacher training program, you're not learning how to teach. You're learning theory. You're learning history of teaching and methods. You're learning classroom management. The ability to explain something to somebody is basically teaching. And we all, to some degree, have the ability to do that. Some of us do it better than others. Some of us are really good at coming up with creative ways to do that. It doesn't mean, however, that you cannot teach your own child if you don't have that background. Now, you may say, okay, that might be true, but I myself literally do not understand algebra. So how on earth am I supposed to teach it? Well, that's okay because we have programs that teach for you. We have tutors. We have online classes. There are so many resources out there that can do the teaching for you that when you get to those particular subjects that you would have absolutely no confidence in yourself in teaching, you don't have to. You can outsource those things, and that is 100% okay. And yes, it is still homeschooling. The last thing a lot of parents worry about is, if I start homeschooling, how am I going to have the time to do everything else I have to do? How am I going to have time for me? Well, I'm not going to lie. It is a time sacrifice to be a homeschooler. You do have to give up certain things, but it does not mean that you have to lose yourself into homeschooling. Remember that homeschooling should not take all day. This is not a 9 to 3 or an 8 to 3 or a 7 to 3 endeavor. This is a few hours a day until your children are old enough to kind of take it over on their own. Your time as a homeschooler is going to look very different in different stages of life with your kids. Yes, when they're younger, it's a lot more hand-holding. It is a lot more from you, but they're younger. You don't do it for as long. You do it for an hour, maybe two, and that's over the course of the whole day. You don't have to concentrate it into one block. And with everybody home, guess what else you get to do? Delegate. Everybody should get more chores when you start homeschooling because everybody is home and they have the opportunity. And hey, we are a team in this family. And so everybody can pitch in and help. You should not have the burden of taking care of all of the household chores, all of the cooking, and all of the homeschooling on your shoulders. You should absolutely 100% teach your kids how to do some of this stuff on their own so that they can take it over as well. And hello, life skills. Is this not something we want our kids to pick up anyway? They need to know how to do these things when they go off into the world. Why not start when they are 5 years old instead of trying to cram it all into their high school years right before they go off to college when they're also busy with 8 million other things? If you start teaching them how to take care of a house, how to cook, how to clean when they're young, then by the time they go off on their own, it'll be old hat. Get everybody pitching in, get everybody to help, and put on the calendar time for yourself. We all need some downtime. We all need some me time. It might not be giant blocks of time like you're used to having if your kids are in public school, but that doesn't mean that you can't tell the family, hey, every Saturday from 9 to noon is me time. Not going to be here. See you later. That's totally fine. You get to carve out time for yourself if you need to. And all homeschool parents are looking for ways that they can get some time on their own. So you talk to other parents and you make a kid swap. Hey, I will take your kids so that you get some free time, and then you can take mine so that I can get some free time. Everybody works together. takes a village, right? Let me know in the comments if I talked about your biggest homeschool fear, because if I didn't, I want to make sure I make a video that talks about the problem that you are having. I'm glad that you were here. I hope that this video helped. Don't forget to watch the rest of the playlist, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.